Hey everyone, I want to talk about now the left sidebar. So you'll see that I'm not in my test file anymore. This is what it looked like before. It was kind of a mess. So I think it's probably best that we look at a real file that, has a bit more structure to it so you can understand what the left sidebar looks like. So I'm just going to pop this out and we are going to talk about this area, the left sidebar. So the left sidebar is where you're going to find layers. There's different types of layers here. You can find frames, there's groups, there's components. Right here, this is a frame. This is what a frame looks like. And this is an auto layout frame. These are this different types of shapes. So this is a line shape, which is a horizontal rule that's going right across. You can see it highlighted. You have groups or different types of layers. So if I were to make this a component really quickly, that's what a component would look like, or a master component if I make a copy of it. That's what an instance of a master component would look like. So I'm just going to backpedal over here so we don't get too deep in the weeds there. But essentially, there's so many different types of layers. You can have shapes, images, GIFs. I mean, they'll all show up differently here just based off of their icon. And this is where you're going to find them. And you'll see some of them are even nested. So this is the header area. And within the header area, I have like the navigation for this design. And within the navigation, I have like the main navigation, which are these different options over here. And if I click this little arrow, I can see all those different options. And essentially, you can nest different types. And that's how Figma works. They allow you to nest frames within frames, or shapes within groups. It makes it really easy for you to understand and where things are and kind of take the approach like a developer as to how to structure some of your content, like within containers and so on. So that's how nesting works. And the easiest way to do that is I'm just going to take a rectangle. So I'm just going to click the rectangle tool. I'm going to take a rectangle, and over here we see my special rectangle. I can take that and put that within my header area. So you can just drag them into wherever you would like, and they will show up accordingly. So I'm just going to quickly delete that by pressing my delete key, or you can press your backspace key, and that is how you get rid of a layer. So you can easily right click on a layer and see all the different options you have for it. You can even do that over here if you'd like. You can right click on a certain layer and get those same options by doing that here. You can drag them, reorder them. You can even delete them by pressing backspace or delete the delete key while you're selecting them. So that's essentially it for how to kind of use them within this sidebar. But you can also double click, and I can name this to cool logo instead. So now that one's renamed. So really, really great here. That's just easy way to rename files. I love naming all the different aspects of my file, just so it's nice and clear for me to come back to it, even share it with others so they understand what they're looking at. When I see things that are frame 1204, it gets really messy. That's what it comes up as. And if you just make new copies, they mean nothing. They just mean frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, and it's really hard to follow that. So I'm just going to delete that really quickly. Okay, so that is how you rename layers, nest layers. You can also lock them, which I find really helpful. Sometimes you want to work on something and you don't want in this instance, let's say we don't want to touch the navigation. So I'll right click over here. You can also see the little lock. You can hide it, but you can even lock it. So once you lock it, you can't really, oops, I'm going to lock the header. Yeah, you can't move the header anymore. So that's really great if you're working with layers that are over top one another. You can easily hide it too if you just don't want to see it at the moment, or lock it. So different options there. You can also do that by right clicking and going to the bottom. These are the shortcuts. Shift Command L on Mac OS and Shift Command H on Mac OS. And that is how you lock and unlock layers. There's also another aspect of this sidebar. So right now I showed you layers. Now there's assets. You can come in here and create components. So an example is if I take this logo, or this button's actually probably a way better example. So if I take this button and I'm just going to drag a copy by holding Option on my Mac, but if I just take this button and turn it into a component, it shows up in my local components, and then I can drag them from there. And now I have a responsive button that I can use anywhere. And Figma will just throw that little tutorial up there, really helpful for us. But that is how you would use your assets panel. And you can use components from other libraries, other projects. Other people can just share libraries with you that they can control, but maybe you'd want the components in there to reuse. But this is a great way to use reusable components. Remember, if you're on a starter plan, you won't be able to use components that extensively. You will only be able to make components within your file like I just did and use them. So I can make this a component. Oops, I'm going to grab the logo here that we made, or that I made. We're going to make this later, but I'm going to grab this logo over here and I'm going to turn it into a component. And now that logo is there. So you can use your local components, but you won't be able to access components beyond that, unfortunately. And that is the assets panel. The last thing I did want to talk about though is the pages. So you'll go back to your layers and you can see over here, you're on the landing page, or I'm on the landing page. You can see all the different types of pages here by just clicking this little drop down, and I can add a new page. And it's going to create a new canvas for me over here. But if I go back here, I have that canvas. If I go back here, I have my cover canvas. So you can move through all these different pages as you see fit, and you can create new pages. Remember, there is a limitation to the starter plan. I believe it's only 3 pages within a file, which isn't too bad, to be honest. Many people won't really exceed that. And some of these files already have a bunch of pages, and you'll be fine using those files because I've given them to you, but you won't be able to create new pages from that. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, and you can just delete pages. You can copy a link to a specific page. You can rename them in the same way you rename layers. You can do that all over here. And you can duplicate pages as well, like I just did. And that is the left sidebar.